He's not from that state. Nobody asked him to be there. He voluntarily did that and then broke curfew, a police enforced mandated curfew on his own volition. Like, no, he didn't walk in there with his gun pointed and started, accosting people. Like, he did not commit murder one. He didn't do that. But
right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that he's did some kind of good thing for society either. He was willing to enter a chaotic and violent atmosphere against the direct orders of the police of that area. And at that point, he is now participating in that chaos and violence. And it's regardless of what his motives were. Everybody looking at it is going to have a different opinion on whose motives were good and whose motives were bad. But just because you feel like your motive is good or bad doesn't justify overstepping what the police are doing. Like you can, I appreciate people's passion and, wanting to, I don't understand it, but I can appreciate people's passion in wanting to like defend your town or whatever from what you see, or people who are just destroying it. But like, A, that wasn't his town, and B, the police were there, and that's why you have police. That's why you have the National Guard. And
yeah,
so
I think
it's not your job. Like, if you want it to be your job, then join up. And like,
right. So I guess I push back on two of your main points there. One, it's not his town. So he grew up there. He was a lifeguard there. His father, all of his cousins were from that town. He worked there. He lived 15 minutes away. So a lot of people say this state lines thing. I mean, he drove, I think it's less than a few miles. So, I mean, I have to drive to church farther than where he drove to go to the riots. So I think part of this is kind of the rural urban divide. People have different concepts of what your community is. I mean, I don't know what criteria would you need for it to be your town. I mean, the amount of time he spent there, the amount of familial connections he had there, he worked there, he was a lifeguard there. I mean, he had more of a right to be there than the rioters. I mean, each of them, if you look at where they come from, I mean, 200, 300, 400 miles for the three individuals.
Sure. And I'm totally down with it. Anyone who came in from the outside was wrong. I'm not here, and I'm going to make this clear here, and this may, I hope this like helps us frame things going forward. I'm not here to defend anyone who was participating in that riot, and explicitly after the curfew was called and the police were closing ranks. At that point, anybody who didn't leave was directly disobeying police orders. So at that point, you're all guilty. Everyone is guilty from that point on. And the reason that we have police there to control the riot is so that we don't have more chaos and more violence. So even if you're there on good intentions, once the police have established we're shutting this zone down, everyone needs to leave, everybody there is now going against what the police are doing, and now are part of the chaos and the violence. Whether your intentions were good or not is irrelevant. It doesn't matter. That genuinely doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that there is a riot, the police are shutting it down, get out. And if you're not getting out, then you're part of the problem. And that's it. And right. and like everything that else happens after that is kind of irrelevant. And he didn't go in there with the intention to murder anyone. I don't think so at all. He did not go in there thinking, I can't wait to kill some dude today. I'm going to go in there and shoot up, all these, I don't think he intended that. I do think that he had some, again, passion, but I would call it misguided, but whatever, it's his passion. We can all be passionate about different things, but in a civilized society, passion doesn't justify violence. That's why in our court system, we have degrees of murder, because murder is never good. Killing someone is never okay. But we understand that there are extraneous circumstances where it could be self-defense or an accident, right? And so we have degrees of that. And like, he didn't commit murder one. He did not go in there with potentially murder anyone. I think it's pretty open and shut, like manslaughter. I don't know that the kid even needed to necessarily go to prison. But like, I just don't understand how there aren't any consequences. And having said that, everyone who was participating there and the people who attacked him violently, well, two of them had to deal with the ultimate consequence. And the third one should have to deal with consequences as well. He was participating in a riot after the police ordered them to leave, and he was acting violently for whatever reason.
Right. So I guess I pushed back a couple places there. For one, the idea that the police had it under control.
It's not yours to judge. It's not yours to judge. It's nobody's to judge except for theirs.
Sure. I guess I would tie it into the community issue. So the riot went on for roughly 3 days. On the first day, he had to leave his job as a lifeguard, and he couldn't make it home because of all the chaos. So he stayed at his friend's house.
Sure.
From the front porch of the friend's house, they could smell the fire and hear the screams.
Okay.
So from there, they go on Facebook, right? And they find, this is the second day, they find a local business owner who had posted a thing on Facebook, happens to be a person of color, although that's, I don't know how relevant that is, who had his car lot burned down, right? So at this point, does not seem like the police have it super under control, but I guess you could debate that. So he goes forward from there, and they're asked, can you come and just keep an eye out, patrol the area? And this is I think the important distinction. At no point did he ever point a gun at someone and say, hey, don't destroy that property or I will shoot you, right? He was walking around. There's video footage of him earlier that day cleaning up graffiti, right? Mm-hmm. That's what he'd been doing all day. And then he was attacked.
Again, it's not murder one. He should, I'm not saying it's first degree murder or second degree. Right. Yeah.
So I guess
okay. That doesn't make it okay.
You don't think your argument is that it's not necessarily illegal. You just think it's morally wrong?
No. He was breaking the law by being there after curfew. 100%.
Okay. So here's where I would push back on that. So my understanding, the reason why the judge threw that out is because the police actually issued an illegal curfew order. There are certain steps and procedures you're supposed to go through to issue that sort of order. What they basically used some sort of automated text service, sent the curfew out, and the judge found it was illegal to send that order out. Yeah. Which here's what I find interesting. There are a lot of institutions, the ACLU, for example, who seems to hate Kyle Rittenhouse, the types of people that usually push back against these sorts of things. All of a sudden, they're very in favor of the police doing their jobs, which isn't normally the case. Which I just kind of find that interesting.
Oh, well, that's kind of the politics of that shit can be hilarious, to put it lightly. Yeah, I again, let's put this out there. We are two white guys, middle-aged white guys, talking about a race riot. So, a lot of the things we're going to say right now need to have some, giant asterisks against
a lot of white people at the race riot.
The conversation
I find interesting.
But so like I'm from Pittsburgh. I live in Pittsburgh, right? So last summer we had to deal with the riots. My downtown was boarded up. Police cars were set on fire. I mean, we had literal riots. We had a mayor lose an election over it. We had, we had the Gestapo police and the unmarked vans come out and kidnap people.
Yeah, I'm from Seattle. We succeeded from the nation briefly.
So I literally did deal with something very similar to what was going on in Kenosha in my own neighborhood, and not at zero time did I ever think, even though I'm watching the news and cop cars are on fire and there's chaos everywhere, not one time did it ever occur to me that like, hey, I should go in there with a gun and do something about this. Like, no, that's why we have the police. That's why we have the National Guard. That's their job. And if you don't like what the police or National Guard are doing or whatever in your town, you get to vote. You get to vote. You can either join the police department or or you can vote. And if you don't like it going on, then vote for a new mayor, vote for a new council rep, and you change the way that your town is policed. Like, there is no acceptable time for vigilante justice. That is inherently subverting the rule of law. Whether you're doing it for good reasons or not, that is irrelevant. The fact is, we are a nation built on the idea of ruling by law, not anyone's, emotions or anyone's, preconceived ideas of what they think, policing should be in their town. It's why we have democracy. It's why we have a representative democracy. It's why we vote. And so, like, I can find plenty of BLM supporters or whatnot that I think are great people, and I agree with them. And I have relatives and friends who are more conservative than me, and we can have conversations, and I can see points made by them that I can understand the passion and how you can, like, get your logic to a degree where you feel like, man, I have to do something. I mean, I feel like I have to do things all the time, right? I go through my own fits of like, exasperation. But at the end of the day, like, if I participate in something where there's violence, if I participate in the violence, it doesn't matter what my intentions are, I'm still participating in the violence. And
Right.
and that's so it's like, I think that this thing sets a bad precedent that people are going to abuse moving forward. So, like, it's not like people showing up to counter protest are with guns is anything new. And Antifa shows up all the time at random places doing dumb stuff, or people who claim Antifa, whatever that means. I mean, Antifa's real, whatever the technicalities of that want to be. The layman person knows that Antifa's a thing. They want to show up to encounter rally and be all aggressive and stuff, just like, and it's, that's not cool. It's not okay. And whether I'm hate fascist or not, doesn't mean that some wacko left-wing Antifa motherfucker who wants to go, be violent at a, whatever parade they want to be violent at. I don't support that. And I'm not like,
Right.
It's the violence. And so,
yeah, I guess, so what I'd say there, so I agree with your point that if the police were able to handle it, if the National Guard was able to handle it,
the police, that's where it stops.
So my issue there is that the mayor and some other city officials actually did request the National Guard, and the governor.
Did they request that citizens to come out armed? No.
Well, my point is, the governor declined the request for political reasons. So that puts the citizens in a rough position. I guess I would use some other
governor. Then vote for a new governor. You get to have
sure. I guess what I would use as an analogy, right? So let's say if you're familiar with the LA riots, like the meme of like roof Koreans and these sorts of people, right? So
I'm not as educated on that. I mean, you're talking about like Rodney King stuff?
Yes. So just a quick summary. Basically, America's a complicated place. There's a lot of racial tensions in urban areas between Asian communities, the Asian immigrants, and the Black people who live there, because the Asian immigrants tend to move in and they're poor first generation immigrants, and they set up like corner stores and shops, and they only hire like their family members, and there tend to be tensions between the Black Americans and the Asian Americans, right? So when the LA riots happened, it's human nature. Like the people in LA targeted the Asians. Like it was basically a pogrom. You know what I mean? So they asked the police for help, and the police did what they tend to do to people who don't like look and talk like them. They said, "Fuck you, we're not going to help you." So what the Asian immigrants did is they posted up on the rooftops with rifles. A lot of these people were Korean War vets, and they said, "This is our only option. The authorities aren't going to help us. So what are we going to do? Just sit here and wait to have our businesses burned down?" I mean, do you have a problem with something like that?
So, I mean, I don't know I haven't heard that part of the riots, but I've never really researched those riots before. So here's, I think the difference is we're talking about people who are at their own physical property, their own businesses that they own, their own homes that they live in, protecting their own property.
Just to
So
be
I
clear,
think-
in a lot of cases, they did call in relatives. There were large extended families. They called in people from
Sure,
neighboring
okay.
cities.
So then they
you know.
specifically called in people like I own a small business and I called my homies in and we're all going to camp out in my shop. And if there's a riot breaking out and they want to come in, like then I'm going to protect the stuff I own. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's when you have a right. You do have a right to protect yourself, your loved ones, and your property. But you don't have a right to protect others' property.
So, okay. So I think a lot of
That's
people
not
have a
inherent,
problem with, they have a problem with the idea of it being a car lot or like a gas station. Let me ask you, if he was there protecting his church, would you have a problem with it?
If he was at his church and his pastor put out a call to have all of the pastor said, I need all of my congregation to come in here and we're gonna hold down this fort together during the riot. I can't imagine a scenario where a pastor would be cool with participating in violence.
I'm from the South. I could introduce you to some guys.
Yeah, but I mean, yeah. But I guess that would be a more difficult question for me to answer for damn sure. But I mean, yeah, if the pastor put out a call for his congregation in this hypothetical where pastors are doing this, and he showed up there and sat on the church steps with his gun, and then some dude ran up under the church steps at him. Yeah, that's open and shut.
So what is the
castle doctrine? Yes.
What is the difference there, except for the individual's subjective?
That he was asked to be there by the pastor of the church specifically for that reason. That's why. That's the difference. He didn't just show up at a car lot and say, oh, this guy put a Facebook post out, and so I'm going to stand here and protect this burnt down car lot that the owner of the car lot testified he did not ask for. So, like, that's the difference. It was this idea that he was there protecting the car lot is made up. Like, and I get that. Okay, so he was passionate about the violence going on, and he didn't live too far away. And I get that. I get that he was passionate, and I respect that he cares. But your passion and your delusion that you're going to go in and like cowboy save the day doesn't justify killing someone. Or doesn't justify violence. It doesn't. And there's no legal precedent that says it does. It doesn't. It just doesn't. That's why killing someone is never okay except for very certain specific reasons, such as self-defense, right? And even then, you should be charged with manslaughter, which is still maybe you don't do like a bunch of jail time, but you're still going to be punished. Like you still have to be held responsible for the fact that you killed someone. In a civilized society, nobody should be killing anyone. And
okay,
you have to err on the side of no one's allowed to kill anyone, and then we'll work backwards from there.
Okay, so I guess my question to you would be, Rittenhouse is in there. He's walking around. My understanding is at the time of the incident, he was putting out, it was literally a dumpster fire. And then Rosenbaum starts running at him.
Yeah, he was accosted. Yeah, I don't think it's murder one. I told you that already.
So, I mean, what are his options at that point? Submit to the attacker or face some sort of criminal charges?
No, he put himself in a shitty situation, and that shitty situation started biting him in the ass, and he fought back. And again, it's not murder one. He's not. I don't think he's a serial killer. I don't think he's a murderer. I don't think he's a terrorist. I think he's a dumbass who willingly entered a chaotic and violent situation against the will of the police and is going to have to deal with the consequences of that. And like, just because like you weren't like someone else, pulled the trigger first doesn't excuse you from inserting yourself in that situation. And like where I'm frustrated, where I think where a lot of people are frustrated is that this kid is like, there's nothing. Like he's not even gonna have to like like face consequences for breaking the curfew. Like now I think, what is it? Is it Black as his dad or his buddy's dad who gave him the gun? That guy's in trouble. I know.
Yeah, I thought it was a family friend that did the straw purchase for him.
Whoever gave him the gun is in trouble. But no, and there's no law that said he couldn't have that gun. They tried to do that law, but technically that only applied.
Yeah, it's a weird loophole where you're not allowed to buy the gun, but you're allowed to own the gun, which doesn't make a ton of sense. There was
something else about the length of the gun, technically, because he was a minor.
Because it was a long barrel gun, technically. Right. But it's a weird law where you can't purchase the gun, but you're technically allowed to own it, which doesn't make a ton of sense. I agree with that.
No, and then I think the way that I've only sparingly read about that, and I think there's something about the way his Mr. Black or whatever acquired the gun is there. He might be facing charges. So who knows? But like, I guess the general premise is like, I like, are you like your first, when you put out on Twitter, like, I want to discuss with somebody's anti-Rittenhouse, I took that as like, I think it's not good for society to have vigilantes running around thinking that they're going to like protect democracy or America. And I'm not saying it's just right wingers. Again, in Pittsburgh, you know, we have peaceful BLM marches, and the next thing you know, you got a bunch of Antifa motherfuckers lighting cars on fire, right? And it's like, oh great, now it's all chaos and we're going to board up the city. Like, thanks guys, you know, way to keep it peaceful and way to be progressive, right? So like, I'm not saying that like conservatives are bad and liberals are good. I'm just saying that like anyone who's going to participate in the riot for whatever reason, like, fuck off. Like, go away. You're not helping. No one's helping. Nobody at that moment was helping. The only person helping were the police and the EMTs. That's it. Everyone else there was in the wrong.
So I think what a lot of this comes down to is that people make a value judgment that he couldn't have possibly been invested in that car lot in that community, which I think is just dead wrong. A lot of people his age, especially young men in America, have a lot of emotional investment in their communities. And I honestly think he went there to help. And if he stopped somebody's small business from being burned down, I think he did help. I think he did make that city a little bit better. So, I mean, people talk about the dangerous precedents this is going to set. I would rather have people like Rittenhouse walking around than I would have people like Rosenbaum and Grosskreutz walking around. Like, I'm not afraid that Kyle Rittenhouse #2 is going to shoot me for no reason. I'm very afraid of people like Rosenbaum #2 going to burn my business down.
I guess where I live, I feel the opposite. I feel like I am much more scared when the white pride, rallies happen in Pittsburgh than when the BLM marches.
He's not one of those guys. He's not one of those guys, though.
No, he hangs out with them. He goes to the bar with them. He takes pictures with them.
Right. So
Matt Getz giving him an internship.
Who is?
Matt Getz.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm not a fan. So here's what I'll say to that. He gets out of jail, and I don't know how familiar you are with the story. He got some lawyer that raised a bunch of money, embezzled it all, and was taking advantage of the kid. And he said now he regrets hanging out with those people. I mean, he's 17. He's got a group of people that were taking him in after the entire world hated him. And did you see what he just did with Tucker Carlson? He just gave this long interview talking about how he supports BLM and how if he was black, he'd still be in jail. He's not a white supremacist.
Right. Again, I'm not framing this. I'm trying to not frame this as a left versus right thing. I'm really not. I'm trying to frame this as do you respect the institutions and rule of law, the written law, or do you believe that you should take the law into your own hands? And at the point that we have people in America who think, this is my hometown, whatever, pardon me, and the police can't handle it, I have to go do it on my own. That's the line that is being crossed a lot of places. And that's the fundamental issue I'm having here. And I think that's the fundamental issue that a lot of people are having, is that like nobody has the right to take their perceived version of the law or what is right or wrong into their own hands. We are a democracy. We are a civilized society. We have institutions, we have the law, and we have the court system. And the courts give us bad results. I understand that, but explicitly designed to do so. But that has to be, so what I'm looking for, you either respect that or you don't. That's the line. That is truly the line. And we can talk about all these other left-right issues, social issues or whatever, or perceived issues or what we, but at the end of the day, we can disagree civilly. We can disagree at the ballot box. We can disagree there. We can peacefully march. But like, once you break the law, once you put yourself into violence voluntarily, you're partaking in violence, and that's not civilized. That's uncivilized.
So there was an article in the New York Times about just the general damage and the scope of the BLM. I think they referred to it as the uprisings, but what they said is that depending on how you skew the numbers, there were between 20 and 50 people killed, and as I think it was like $2 billion in damage over that summer. So yeah. I guess I disagree with the notion that like, if this comes to your town, vote out your governor. Like, I don't think that's it, man.
My doorstep, then I have the right to defend my doorstep. Yes. But
how far away from your doorstep would you draw the line? How far away from your particular house would you draw the line? Like your neighbor?
It's however the castle doctrine is applied in my state.
So literally you wouldn't help your neighbor next door.
I would, I could communicate with my neighbor beforehand and make an agreement that we were in this together.
What if they didn't ask you to come over?
Then no, legally, technically, no. Like if there's a robber,
on, man.
No, castle doctrine.
Come on, man.
No. Here's how it works. Here's how it works. If it's my neighbor, I am not allowed to kill somebody in my neighbor's house who is not there lawfully. I can citizens arrest. I can try to detain them. I can call the police. There's a lot of things I can do, but I am not legally allowed to kill somebody on somebody else's property.
Okay, so but let's make the analogy like for like. Let's say there was something sketchy going on at your neighbor's house, so you're walking around checking it out.
I mean, I've been there.
Maybe you're cleaning up some broken glass, and you're like, "This is weird." And then some convicted pedophile charges at you and tries to grab the barrel of your rifle.
Okay, now he charged at me. That's a different.
But what were you doing? What were you doing putting yourself in that position? You see what I'm saying?
Right. No, I understand what you're saying there. Am I going to kill them? And if I do, then I get charged with manslaughter.
So you'd say your options are either
I can defend myself. I can disarm him. I can no, legally that's technically how it's supposed to work. So the biggest problem I have with this case is, again, it should have been manslaughter. It was
what do you mean disarm him?
Okay, so like somebody comes at me like let's take the example of in Rittenhouse. Dude comes at him and hits him with a skateboard. Right? That's not a threat to his life. He has the right to like turn around and hit that guy back. He could butt him with the end of his gun. He could take his skateboard. He could break his arm. But your self-defense only goes as so far as what is threatened to you, against you, right? So yet the one guy who came up to him and had a gun, yeah, he's got a right to point the gun back at him. Absolutely. But like if somebody's coming at you with fists and you come back at them with a gun, that's unreasonable. Okay, that would normally be considered unreasonable force, and you would get charged. Like that's what is so frustrating about this case. It's like you're not allowed to use unreasonable force to defend yourself. You just because somebody punches you doesn't give you the right to kill them. Just because somebody hits you doesn't give you the right to kill them.
There are no fist fights when a gun's on the table. It only takes one hit. You're knocked out.
Yeah, who's got the
You're
gun?
dead.
He was the only
You're
one with the gun with the first two people.
Right. But I'm saying if there's a gun on the table, you don't get in a fist fight. You don't let that happen.
We could say that the two guys who came at him are dumb. Sure, they're dumb. That doesn't mean they deserve to.
No, I'm not saying they don't. I'm saying Kyle doesn't. If you're Kyle and there's a gun on the table, you do not allow a fist fight to happen.
You're gonna have to find me where that's written in a law book somewhere. I don't know.
Oh God.
So yeah, so I mean, this is why cops shoot to kill, right?
They have a license. They have a license. Licensed, trained professionals.
Right, but they don't have a different.
No. It's a massive caveat. It's not just licensed, trained professionals.
Well, they're only different in terms of civil liability, is my understanding. But what I'm saying is,
trained professionals, government employees who have gone through training that we pay taxes for in an organization to do that job.
Yeah, well, I mean, they go through like 6 hours of firearms training a year. I know a lot of cops. They're shockingly undertrained.
It's a hell of a lot more training. It doesn't matter. They are licensed by.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. But my point is, if you have a gun, especially open carry, that's such a huge factor here. If you have a weapon, you can't just get into fisticuffs with somebody, because if you lose, they have your gun now. You get what I'm saying? This is something that I've heard a lot. Why didn't he just put the gun down? Why didn't he get in a fight with the guy? You can't do that if you're armed. Everybody who's into guns knows this. You can't fight people if you have a firearm. That's not how it works, because you're giving up possession of the firearm to the individual you're fighting.
Don't carry around big guns.
But I mean, in America, you have a legal right to.
Sure, we have a legal right to do a lot of dumb shit here. You know,
right?
I mean, that's the beauty of America, is that you're legal how to do it. We have a whole lot of freedom here, for good or bad.
Right.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I just don't know how I get past the fact that he was there past curfew. I just don't understand how that's excused. I just don't get it. I think everybody who was there after, once the police declared curfew and started closing ranks, you're part of the problem. Anybody who isn't out is part of the problem. And this is why they do that. This is why you have police to do this, because chaos is happening. Violence is happening. And the police don't know who's good or bad. The police don't know that, oh, Kyle's the good guy with the gun and so-and-so's the bad guy with the gun. How the hell are the police supposed to know that? As far as the police are concerned, everyone in that sphere is a bad guy. So you're just putting yourself in a situation where everyone is triggered. Everyone thinks everybody's the bad guy. And the only people, and what's interesting here is, in this situation, the only people who were allowed technically to shoot people were the ones who didn't. And this is why you have trained professionals as police officers, to avoid these situations, to explicitly tamp this down before we have a bunch of vigilantes running around shooting each other.
Okay, so let me
you're just setting up this is gonna get worse before it gets better, man.
So let me give you another example. So there have been a lot of communities in America that historically have been ignored by the police. Obviously, the Black community is a huge example. And so what is the natural result of this? You get the Black Panthers, you get people with rifles. This is actually why California has such strict gun laws. A lot of people aren't aware of that. It's in result. Yeah. So they say, hey, we've got a huge crime problem. The cops will not show up to our neighborhood. We're going to start patrolling the streets. And I can think of plenty of examples where I think vigilante justice is justified. Obviously, lots of huge bad examples too, right? But to say that you could never be in a situation where the cops aren't helping your community and you have to take it upon yourself, I could think of plenty of examples where that's true.
Again, your beliefs and your passion does not supersede the law. And I can agree. We can take sides here. We could take political sides on which protesters we like. At the end of the day, or rioters, if you will, at the end of the day, they were all breaking the law. That's it. And it doesn't matter whose side you're on. Like, it doesn't, that's irrelevant. It is absolutely irrelevant. And if you don't like it, you vote.
So
it's the only way you're going to carry out a civilized society. Otherwise, you're just divulging into tribalism, into vigilantism, into chaos, into anarchy. That's where this goes.
I haven't seen any evidence.
The rule of law, or you don't.
I haven't seen any evidence that Rittenhouse didn't have a legal right to be there. The curfew was thrown out. It was found to be an unjustified curfew. The cops can't just declare a curfew.
Know at the time that the curfew, nobody there knew at the time the curfew was illegal. All they know is that there's a riot going on. The police are closing ranks, and the police said, "Get out."
Okay, let's say it was an illegal curfew. Let's say it was 100% justified. They went through the proper procedure. Breaking curfew is a misdemeanor.
Yeah,
it's breaking curfew. Legally speaking, it's about the same as jaywalking. So you're saying if I get in an altercation while not paying parking tickets, jaywalking, fill in the blank, I mean, I'm not allowed to legally defend myself?
I think it detracts from his self-defense case. I think it's like it absolutely detracts from his self-defense case. And I understand that, okay, technically it was illegal, so therefore when the jury looks at it, they're not allowed to take that into account. Again, I'm not going to argue the technicalities of the case because the framing of it was questionable. The judge, I won't get into like from what I understand, it's not uncommon for a judge to say you can't refer to the deceased as a victim until, because you don't know, when you're discussing self-defense, but for the judge to then allow, the process or the defense to call the people who were shot, rioters and looters and criminals is insane. So that is very unfair.
I would actually give you that one. It's my understanding that Judge Schroeder, what he did in terms of the victims terminology, that is actually pretty unusual. From what I was reading, that's something he's done for like 20 years, though. It wasn't specific to Rittenhouse. But yeah, I agree. It is unusual for a judge to do that.
Yeah.
Are you one of the people who thinks he's biased? Just curious.
I think it's very hard when you see the pictures and videos of the way he was interacting with Rittenhouse and his lawyers. It's really hard to not come to to think that, like, man, there's something not right about this. And then again, the way he framed the rioters versus victims thing was really messed up. And yeah. And I don't know the specifics of his, like, when he was giving his final instructions to the jury, but I know that oh God, I don't have it in front of me, and I'm like he
said if you throw out one charge, throw them all out. Is that what you're talking about?
No, he was he was talking about the self-defense thing, and then he like stopped mid-sentence because he realized that he was working against his own argument on it. But so I guess you and I are not too far apart on the idea that, like, maybe this wasn't the best trial.
No, I don't think Schrader was biased. I think there are a couple misunderstandings there. So, like, you familiar? People are saying he's racist because of the Asian food joke. Did you hear that one?
I don't know if that makes him inherently racist. It makes him a douchebag.
Okay, can I clear that up?
I don't think he hates Asian people. He's trying to make a joke about the supply chain and blah, 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 I think, right?
Right, but the media portrayed that like he was talking about like it's 1850 and Asians are getting off the boats for the gold rush. He's talking about boats. He's talking about boats being backed up.
It was a really shitty joke told by a 75 white
Why
dude.
Is it shitty? Because boats and Asian reminds people of like immigration. That's not what he was talking about, though. He's talking about supply chain.
But why? But I know, but it again. God, maybe we just need to pass the baton from the 75-year-olds down here because I thought it was incredibly inappropriate for him to say something that knowing he's on TV.
What is inappropriate about it? Like specifically,
just don't make racist jokes. Don't make jokes involving.
Why is it racist?
Why is it racist to talk about how I hope that the food isn't coming off the boats from Asia?
He didn't say that.
What did he say?
He said off the harbor, which is the lake by Wisconsin. So what he was talking about specifically is how things generally are backed up. I hope
Chinese
the food
Chinese.
He's saying
the Chinese food off the.
So he's saying, I hope the food we ordered is not backed up. The fact that it was Chinese food is incidental.
No, I
He's
think
not
he
saying
specifically said
it because it's Chinese food. That's where the misunderstanding is.
yeah.
Like
Yeah,
this is what
no,
I'm saying.
no. I
People
think the
thought
dude. You know what? We're also talking about a guy who genuinely doesn't understand how to use a cell phone.
right. Or so is your
I,
issue
I'm just
there?
saying, what I'm saying is, I'm not going to sit here and call the judge a racist. I just think he's
Kind
75,
of
maybe
implied it though.
doesn't need to be. There's a difference. There's a nuance between being like racist to where like, oh, I hate somebody for, inherently because of their color or their, whatever, versus somebody who's just a fucking arrogant old white asshole.
Here's what I think.
Like
This
I
is
don't.
my
So am I
honest
going to tell you
opinion.
that he's like this guy is a effing racist? No, but he's is he a rich old white prick? Yes.
I get what you're saying. I think if they had ordered pizza that day, he would have made the exact same joke. I guarantee you that.
I guess we'll never know.
So in your head, just we could move off this in a second. In your
Yeah.
head, you think basically what he's saying is like Asian immigrants coming off the boat is what he meant. Or Asian people coming off the boat. As in like they just came over here from their country, they're getting off the boat. Like that's why he brought up the boat aspect.
No. I think he was referencing the supply chain issues.
And how is it racist? I don't get it.
Because where the fuck do we buy everything from? Where does everything come from?
I don't know. What do you mean?
Food. Where I hope we're not getting that Chinese food off the boat. Like,
because things off the boats are have been late lately.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you. You're right. I can't sit here and say technically that's an overtly racist thing to say, but I think it's like I just wouldn't say it.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, do you have? We can move off Schrader. Do you have any other opinions on him? I know the ringtone, the enhancing of the evidence. Those were a couple of controversies.
Whatever the ringtone. I don't know. I think he was trying as hard as he could to dismiss evidence based on his inability to use a cell phone, which I found like mind-boggling. Like every person under the age of 50 in that room was just like, oh my God, dude. Like, you're
talking about where he wouldn't let the prosecution zoom in? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I save a text and then I zoom in on my phone, it gets pixelated. Well, yeah, dude, because nobody does it like that, you dummy. Like,
right.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. He doesn't, because he doesn't comprehend how zooming in on a cell phone, on his cell phone, is different than taking a high definition picture into a proper computer and then like. Okay, I don't know what to do about that. You're 75. Like, how do you
absolutely
75-year-old?
So here's what I would say there. There have been a lot of criticisms of him. So the Cookie magazine, the crazy ramblings about saving text messages and emailing them and all this nonsense. All of that stuff was taken during breaks. So none of that stuff happened during the trial, which I think is important. The second thing is I think he's actually 100% right with the zooming. So what typically happens in a court case, my understanding, is that anytime you edit a piece of media, zoom it in, slow it down, there has to be an expert involved with that who uses a specific type of software that actually produces a report that shows you the algorithm of how the video was enhanced, even for something like slowing it down. So the fact that they wanted to zoom in on a video on the fly, radically unprofessional. That the prosecution even tried to do that. And they've been criticized. There's a lot of weird shit they did in this case.
And I'll say the prosecution was terrible from the get-go because they never should have charged him for murder one in the first place.
Yeah. And I've heard people who've worked with him that say he's actually a fairly competent lawyer. So I don't know where that came from.
Sorry.
Oh, no worries. Okay. So, I don't know. So yeah, man, I don't know. Is there anything else you'd want to say about this?
I guess like when I took it's like anti-Rittenhouse, I was just really like trying to comprehend like are you saying that it's okay to be a vigilante outside of what the police are doing? Like, you think that's a good idea?
I could think of situations where it's good. Like, for example, like it would have been good if there was someone like.
But do you understand? Okay, look. So, like, it kind of boils down to the same logic, right? Like, in America, our justice system will let 10 people go, the guilty people go away, get off before the idea of it, let's say, because I mean, we have bad judgments all the time, but we will let 10 guilty people get away with it before we falsely incarcerate one innocent person. That's how it's all designed. The idea is, you can't. So therefore, you can't, like, if that's the logic that we base our legal system on, what right does a civilian have then to go marauding around a place of potential violence and then decide that they are going to, like, enforce something on the idea of, without being the law, or then without the proper I can't think of the word right now, but backing of the law.
So I guess I would agree with you if at any point he had tried to perform like a citizen's arrest, or if he had given someone orders, or if he had pointed the gun at someone, but he was just trying to put out a fire. I mean, I think he had a complete right to do that. If you're there putting out graffiti all day, walking around, handing people, antiseptic because they got cuts and scrapes, and helping people who've been tear gassed, and cleaning up graffiti, and you happen to be armed because it's an extremely chaotic situation, I think you have every right to do that as an American, especially if you're a lower class person from not the best town and you've just been completely thrown under the bus from every institutional level in the country, from the police to your governor to the president of the United States, who the guy, Jacob Blake,
he perceives that. That doesn't mean we all perceive to be slighted, man. Like,
here's what I mean. So your town is being burned down, and the guy who instigated it, the president and vice president, are calling him up and telling him what a great guy and a hero he is. If the police won't help you, your governor just turned down the National Guard. What are you supposed to do? Just sit there and watch another business get burned down?
Yeah, it's like a job. Yeah. I mean, I know it's sad, and let the people who are causing the violence deal with the repercussions of that. You don't need to partake. You don't. Let the people who are misbehaving be the ones who are misbehaving. The second that you involve yourself in that situation, you become part of it.
So, okay, do you say that because it's just businesses being burned down? Let's say if they're going around killing people, you'd obviously say, well, now someone has a right to be there, right?
If that riot had turned into starting mass murderers, the police response would have been immense. But that's the whole thing. It wasn't. Like, there was shit going on. It's a riot. I've seen it with my own eyes now. I know what a riot is in real life. And yeah, at the point it goes from burning police cars and buildings to, like, ransacking houses. Yeah, the police are going to be let off the leash. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's where I just disagree with you. I think at every level the police have been restrained and not allowed to get involved. They just
minimize casualties, minimize violence, minimize all of that.
But I thought you said the police would handle it.
They will, and nobody else died except for the people that Kyle shot that night.
Lots of people have died. Lots of people have died in these riots.
In that riot, except for the 2 people that Kyle got in an altercation with.
Not in Kenosha, that's true. But in lots of other cities, lots of people have died.
That's nothing to do with, like, those are in those jurisdictions. We'll deal with.
Do you think there's something fundamentally different about those other riots?
Yeah, I guess the Kenosha one was relatively more peaceful. It's not my job. If I wanted to be the person making those decisions and casting those judgments, I could either be a judge, get into the judicial branch, or I could be a cop, or I could run for political office, right? But I'm not doing any of those things. So I don't have any authority whatsoever under the rule of law to then cast my judgment on what other people are doing somewhere that isn't directly to me or my house. Or yeah, if I make an agreement with my pastor to be the bodyguard at the church, then the pastor, then I'm there with friends, then sure, then I'm justified to be there. Or if I made an agreement with my neighbor, I have in my life thought that someone was breaking into my neighbor's house and gone across the street and called the cops, and they've talked to me, I'm on the phone with them, and I'm seeing a light in the house that I thought, and they're instructing me, like, don't stand on the property. If you see somebody tell me where they ran, do not engage them, blah, blah, blah. I've been there. Like, it's not my, like that. That's why you have insurance. That's why we have insurance, like, and it's, the police are there to deal with the aftermath. You can't, if you start endorsing vigilante justice, you are inherently against the rule of law. And I understand you might have all the best reasons to do so, but it's still not the rule of law. And that's what it comes down to. And I respect that you care. I respect your passion. I respect all of that. And I wish that we didn't have to be in these situations where we even feel like we're not safe from our fellow neighbors. Sorry, my dog is dying over here.
No worries.
Yeah. But yeah, I just don't know how else we're supposed to be a civilized society if we are going to endorse vigilantism as like a thing to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's just where I would disagree with you. I think there are a certain amount of people that view the riots as just a necessary evil and just part of the political process at this point. They happen every 4 years, like time clock. And I think there's some people who just said, no, that's not going to happen to our town. And like, I totally respect that, honestly.
I think that in a lot of places, how do I say this? I'll say this. I think things are going to get messy. Can
I ask you, do you blame any of the people that incentivize these riots by stretching the truth? I mean, take Jacob Blake for an example. People who just completely lied about what happened and said things that obviously incited violence. I mean, do you hold them responsible at all?
I'm sorry. I not as in the loop, man. I'm sorry if I'm not the best debate partner here.
No worries, man. So like Jacob Blake, that's what started this whole thing, right? So Jacob Blake
he was the guy who got shot, right, by the cops in the car. Like the Kenosha riots are because the cop shot that dude up, like right in front of his daughter and everything, and in front of the whole fucking complex. The officer just was like pop, pop, pop.
Okay, let me just run you through how I view that situation. Jacob Blake was reported as unarmed black man shot in the back. He was called up by the president and the vice president. Joe Biden said he was proud of him. Kamala visited with his family. I mean, this was talked about ad nauseum at every level. I mean, every newspaper, every media report, just black men being hunted down in the streets, right? The most extreme language possible. Here's what happened. Jacob Blake had several children with this woman who was raising the children.
Yeah.
And he broke into her house. She's in bed with the kids. He sexually assaults her while she's in bed with the children and says, "You smell like you've been with other men." So she files charges. He comes back later, starts kidnapping the kids, putting them in the car. She's calling the police. Oh my God, please save my babies. They show up. They try to taser him. It doesn't work. They try to mace him. It doesn't work. He starts getting in the car. They tell him, don't get in the fucking car. They said, do not get in that fucking car with those kids. He gets in the car and they open fire on him. Like, I think they did everything like reasonable in that situation. What, are you going to let him drive off with the kids? Like, so maybe you could argue, maybe they should have tried to taser him for the 5th time. I don't know, but to just write this up as yet another innocent unarmed black man shot in the back, and they knew this is in the middle of the BLM summer riots. They knew what would happen. They knew what would happen when they reported on it like that. Like,
Well,
I think it's evil.
So I there might be idiots out there framing this as innocent black man shot in the back.
ACLU, New York Times, like, this is as mainstream as it gets. This is prestigious as it gets. The president, the vice president, like the governor of Illinois, I mean, the attorney general, you name it, all these people had his back, knowing what happened, and they had to, because the political consequences of criticizing him would have been severe. So they had to do that.
People get ignored all the time. If I'm remembering this correctly, you're talking about a guy who was at the door of his car and shot multiple times, not disabled. Seven times. And so that's not just like putting a guy down to arrest him, right? So it's, no one is trying to say that dude was a good guy or anything like that. What we're trying to say is, or what people, I am too, yeah, is like, again, and this goes back to the vigilante thing. The cop in that situation doesn't get to be the person who decides that, you know, this guy's acting irrational, crazy, but his only job is to apprehend the suspect and bring him to the trial. That's it. The cop doesn't get to decide, I'm going to shoot this guy 1 time versus 5. There was no reason to shoot this guy 7 times from point blank.
Can I say something on that real quick? So this is another, there are a lot of sort of idiosyncrasies of gun use that don't seem like they would be common sense. Like, gun use isn't always how you think it should be. So if you shoot someone, you aim for center mass because that's the safest way to take down a target. You shoot to kill, that's rule number 2, and you empty your clip. Those are the 3 rules. So this whole thing of like, you shoot somebody once, that's not how you do it. Like, you don't shoot somebody once, you don't shoot people in the hand to disarm them, you don't get in a fist fight. Then
maybe we got to reevaluate how the way police use guns, because no, I don't think it's okay that police are killing people unloading a clip. I'm just not okay with that. That's not their job. Their job isn't to kill people in the streets. Their job isn't to unload clips. Their job is to apprehend a suspect who is innocent until proven guilty. And sure, this guy might have been guilty of sin. That's not the cop's job.
The point is, he was a threat to the kids, though. I guess that's the point I'm trying to make.
And you don't have to shoot somebody 7 times in the spine to fucking from point blank range to stop them from driving a car.
They did try to taser him, though. They gave him verbal commands. I mean, it just didn't work.
Yeah, tasers. I think there's a lot of things that could be done differently. You know, tasers.
Do you think it maybe could have been reported on with a tad more nuance? like, did you? Let me ask you a question, because you seem like an extreme.
I do remember, you know, and I was reading about some stuff earlier today, just trying to brush up. That, you know, the guy was obviously a suspect being hunted. Yeah. What caused all this? And the uproar wasn't necessarily that they arrested some, you know, asshole. The uproar was like, why are you shooting people in the middle of the day in front of everybody 7 fucking times? Like you don't. It's just like, yeah, we get it, but like we've all seen Training Day, right? Like, the gratuitous, like the cop doesn't get to decide. He gets to unload a clip on somebody from point blank range at 2:00 in the afternoon or whatever time it was in the middle of the fucking day in front of everyone. The cop's only job is to apprehend him and bring him to the jail so then he can be processed and tried. It's not the cop's job.
Do you think they should have let him drive off?
No, but you don't have to shoot him 7 times either. That's the thing. There is nuance here. And like, you don't have to unload the clip on the guy. You don't. It's like in Pittsburgh, we had a couple of years ago, we had this guy fleeing from a cop, running away. get shot in the back 13 times. 13. So you're telling me the cop didn't have him down after one? Like you connect one time and you have to unload 12 more times?
Was that Walker Scott?
What's that?
Was that Walker Scott? I know that was the guy who was shot in the back.
No.
The cop went to jail for that one.
God, this was like 2 or 3 years ago. But that's the problem. That's the problem. It's like, so the kid was committing, he was a suspect in something and freaked out, started running from the cops, and the cop shoots him in the back 13 times.
Was that the kid? I think there's a video of that. It was the kid in the gym shorts. There are two of them.
No. God, what is this kid's name? I sound like an idiot now, but
no worries. Unfortunately, there are a lot of these, so it's hard to keep track. That's essentially what it's coming down. It's like when you see images of who was the kid that shot that church a couple of years ago? Dylan Roof.
Dylan Roof, and then the cops are peacefully arresting him and taking him out to McDonald's on his way to the courthouse. Like,
do you know why they gave him McDonald's?
It doesn't matter. When does anybody get fucking McDonald's on their, if you're a serial murderer?
So this is something they do. They actually do this. It's pretty common in Chicago and gang units. Basically what they do, they want you to get you to inform on your buddies. So they bring you in, they do good cop, bad cop. One guy sort of roughs you up. The other guy comes in. Wow, that guy was such a fucking asshole. Here, man, you want a Slurpee? You want a Big Mac? Come here, I'm your buddy. Tell me what you did. And they get the guy to open. It's a investigative tactic. It's how they interrogate people. So this idea that they were just buddy with Dylan Roof, that's that's a great example, man. That sort of shit is so harmful. That's the sort of shit that makes people think, fuck it, I will go burn down a Walmart, because it stretches the truth to the point of being cartoonishly evil. And there's plenty of normal evil shit to talk about. I don't think people need to make it look like the cops are buddy with terrorist black church shooters. You know what I mean?
It'd be a lot easier to believe and maybe that's what they were doing. I don't know why they needed to play good cop, bad cop with Dylan Roof, but there is plenty of history in America, both from 300 years ago until yesterday, of an unequal justice system and a government explicitly designed to take the rights away from minorities.
I agree with that. I agree with all that.
So until at this point, the burden of proof that things are changed is on the police, is on the government. And until that is proven, until the public eye sees that all suspects are treated equally, regardless of the situation they're in, it's the perception is still going to be that it's unfair and unequal. And maybe the cops are trying to do the good cop, bad thing with Dylan Roof, who's maybe.
What in your head, what is it you think that happened? Why do you think they bought him McDonald's?
Some they probably felt sorry for. He's a psycho kid and was freaking out, and they probably just felt bad for him. Honestly, yeah, he was obviously. I mean, the kid's obviously disturbed. I don't know that the cops were in there giving him, hey, good job, here's a Big Mac. I mean, that's kind of.
They just took him for a little hate crime Happy Meal.
Yeah, just more of a whatever, calm him down, maybe. Who knows? But you see so many other people just get shot 7 times in the spine in the middle of the day.
Right. So okay, talking about the
Happy Meal.
Talking about the number of shots thing. So I guess
murder a church of people. No, but he gets shot 7 times in the spine.
So
Dylan Roof gets a Happy Meal. And whether or not they were playing good cop, bad cop or not,
So I've seen a lot of these going around about it. It's true. I think there is a huge difference between there's a huge difference in the aggregate, not always, but on a statistical average between the different treatment between white and black Americans.
Yeah.
But like I can find you so many examples. Like I mean, just like Andrew Coffey, who's the guy, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, people who shot at cops and lived. I mean, I could show you all kinds of pictures of Black Panthers walking around with ARs.
Oh,
Like
sure.
the idea that like all these people just get executed on the spot. I mean, look, a lot of people don't know this. Rittenhouse walked up to the cops and they fucking maced him.
Yeah, because he at first
He tried to turn himself in, and they couldn't understand each other. The cops maced him, told him to fuck off.
Well, yeah, because he was there after curfew, breaking curfew during a riot, and they thought he was a threat. Yeah, this is why you don't go to a riot.
There's this idea that they were like buddy with him though, which clearly isn't true.
So like there was that one video where like essentially the crowd was like had to tell the cops, "Hey, active shooter right here," and the cops were like, "Oh, that guy." Like, it's chaos. It's a riot. I just don't know how anybody thinks that they're going to insert themselves in that situation to make it better, because it's just not going to be better until it's over. And like, yeah, man. So like, I appreciate that. I very much appreciate the cordial conversation. This is like astonishingly refreshing. Actually, it's not
absolutely.
I mean, a decent conversation at all. Yeah, I just don't know how that you and I are going to reconcile the idea of like, is vigilantism acceptable or not?
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming on, man. It was a great conversation. I really appreciate you having the balls to come on and do this. A lot of people wouldn't, especially come on and be just as respectful and cogent as you've been. So it takes a lot, especially considering the fact that we met on Twitter, which is a fucking miracle at this point as well as it did.
This is the one thing we are the outliers right now. We are definitely the outliers, and hopefully like 10 people watch this video and maybe one person's like, oh, the world's not too bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on, dude. Have a good night.
Have a nice evening, man. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving too.
Thanks. You too.